If someone asked me when I realized I didn't matter to my family anymore, I'd say it was the day my mother called me by my sister's name, and didn't even notice. It was a Sunday morning in our quiet little town in Oregon. The smell of pancakes filled the kitchen, sunlight glowing across the yellow curtains. My mother smiled at the table. "Lila, can you pass the syrup?" she said sweetly. I froze. "Mom," I said quietly. "I'm Isabella." She blinked, paused a second, and laughed. "Oh, right. Silly me." But she didn't look embarrassed. She looked comfortable, like it was normal, calling me by my sister's name, forgetting I existed even while staring straight at me. That was the first crack in something I thought would last forever. Growing up, Lila was the golden one. The kind of daughter parents show off to neighbors. She had perfect grades, perfect hair, perfect manners. I was different. I loved art, messy hands, loud music, questions that made people uncomfortable. I wasn't rebellious. I just didn't fit their idea of perfect. At 17, I'd already learned that in our house, love was conditional. When I got accepted into an art program in Portland, my parents barely looked up from their phones. But when Lila made the cheerleading team, they threw a barbecue and invited half the town. By the time I left home at 19, they barely noticed. For 5 years, I built a life for myself. I studied design, lived in a small apartment with plants that never died on me, and made art that finally felt like me. I didn't call home much, and they didn't either. Until one afternoon when my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Mom, your dad's retiring. Big family party next weekend. Come home. Lila's helping organize." I stared at the message. 5 years of silence. And suddenly I was invited to a party? Still, something deep down, something foolishly hopeful, whispered, maybe things are different now. So I packed a bag and went home. The Moore house looked the same, yet somehow smaller. The white paint on the porch peeled, the garden overgrown, but the old wind chime still clinked like it used to. When I rang the bell, my mother opened the door, her smile wide and practiced. "Oh my God, Isabella," she said, hugging me quickly. Too quickly. "You look artistic." "Hi, Mom," I said flatly. Then I saw Lila, standing in the living room, dressed in soft pastels, her hair curled perfectly, holding a glass of lemonade like it was part of her soul. She smiled. That kind of smile that said, "I'm winning." "Isabella," she said. "It's been ages." "Yeah," I said. 5 years, you look exactly the same." She laughed softly. "Some of us don't change much." That evening, I helped decorate for Dad's retirement dinner. Lila barked orders like a professional event planner. "Mom wants the banner straight," she said. "And Isabella, can you move those chairs? Oh, and maybe don't touch the cake. It's kind of delicate." I clenched my jaw, the same dynamic, the same control. When Dad came home, he hugged Lila for a long time. Then he turned to me, smiled awkwardly, and said, "Hey, kiddo, you made it." I nodded. I did. We sat down for dinner, laughter, small talk, Lila telling stories about her fiancé, her promotion, her perfect life. No one asked about mine. Later that night, I walked into what used to be my old room, or at least, where it should have been. Except now it was a nursery. Pink wallpaper. A crib, stuffed animals. I froze. Mom appeared behind me. "Oh yes? We thought it'd be perfect for Lila's baby. She's moving back in for a while. Isn't that wonderful?" I turned to her slowly. "Where am I supposed to sleep?" She smiled faintly. "We set up the guest room in the basement. It's cozy. Cozy. That's what she called the cold, unfinished basement with no windows." That night, as I lay on the thin mattress, I stared at the pipes above me and thought, They replaced me. Literally. My room, my photos, my place gone. The next morning I woke up early. Lila was already in the kitchen, glowing like the center of the universe. Mom buzzed around her like a planet in orbit. "Oh, Isabella, could you grab the orange juice?" Mom said without looking up. I did. Quietly. Then I noticed something on the fridge, a photo collage. All of us, except me. Family vacation. Dad's birthday. Lila's engagement. Even the family dog had more pictures than I did. I stood there for a long time, and then, softly, I smiled, because for the first time, I realized something powerful. If they could forget me that easily, I could teach them what remembering really feels like. That day, I went into town and visited an old friend, Alex Rivera, who'd been my closest ally in high school before he left for journalism school. He worked at the local paper now. When he saw me, his eyes widened. "Isabella Moore? Back from the dead?" "Something like that," I said, smiling faintly. We sat at a cafe, sipping coffee that smelled like warmth and freedom. "Tell me," he said, "what brings you back?" "Family event," I said. "But there's more." I found something strange. I pulled out a photo I'd snapped of a folder I found in the basement, labeled property transfer. Inside, I'd discovered paperwork showing my parents had quietly signed their home over to Lila and her fiancé while my father was still alive. Alex raised an eyebrow. "So they're cutting you out entirely?" I nodded, completely. "And pretending it's normal." He leaned back. "You sound like you're planning something." I smiled slowly. "You could say that." Over the next few days, the house buzzed with party preparations. Lila's fiancé, Ethan, arrived. Charming, confident, and just as self-absorbed as she was. They were the kind of couple who took selfies in the middle of serious conversations. "Babe, look this way," Lila said, giggling. "Dad's speech will be epic." I stayed in the background, quiet, polite, invisible, until the night before the party, when I overheard something that changed everything. Lila and my mom were in the kitchen. Their voices were low but sharp. "She's only here for attention," Mom whispered. "I know," Lila said. "But don't worry. Once the party's over, she'll be gone." Just like before. My stomach twisted. Gone. Again. I went down to the basement, sat on the edge of my bed, and looked at the cracked concrete floor. Something inside me shifted. Slow. Deliberate. Unstoppable. If they wanted me gone, they'd get their wish, but they'd never forget me again. The next morning, I put my plan in motion. I found the storage box in the attic that held years of family albums, school records, and property files. Among them were receipts and contracts that my father, the meticulous accountant, had kept hidden. And one thing caught my eye. A document showing that the family's charity fund was actually a tax shelter under Lila's name, illegal and dangerous if exposed. I smiled to myself. Finally, something worth remembering. That evening, as guests began arriving for the big retirement party, I stood by the window, watching the perfect life my parents had built. All around her, Claire's laughter, Mom's fake smiles, Dad's proud speech about family unity. And I realized something. I didn't have to scream to be heard. All I had to do was tell the truth. The night of my father's retirement party was one of those evenings that look perfect from the outside. Fairy lights twinkling, music soft, laughter rolling through the backyard like a well-rehearsed play. But beneath that perfection, something ugly hid beneath every smile. Lila stood near the microphone, laughing with Ethan, her hand resting proudly on her pregnant belly. Mom fussed with the decorations while Dad shook hands with neighbors. And me? I stood on the edge of it all, invisible, as usual, holding a glass of champagne I didn't intend to drink, because tonight wasn't a celebration. It was a reckoning. Earlier that morning, "I'd called Alex. Are you sure about this?" he'd asked. I could hear the worry in his voice. "Completely," I said. "They erased me, Alex. Every photo, every memory, even my name. It's time they remember who I am and what they did." He sighed. "You always were fearless, Isabella." "Not fearless," I said. "Just done being quiet." He promised to be there, not as a friend, but as a journalist, ready to capture every truth I planned to reveal. As the evening unfolded, I watched my family perform. Dad gave his speech, talking about legacy and values. Mom dabbed fake tears from her eyes. Lila stood beside him, radiant, glowing, the image of success. And finally, Dad said, "I want to thank my family, my beautiful wife and my daughter Lila, for standing by me through everything." A pause. Then he continued, "And, of course, Isabella, for visiting us." The crowd clapped politely. A few turned toward me with awkward smiles. That was my moment of truth, the one that confirmed what I'd always known. To them, I was just a guest in my own home. I took a deep breath and walked toward the stage. My heels clicked against the deck, silencing the music for just a second. "Actually," I said calmly, taking the microphone from my father's hand, "I'd like to say something." Dad looked startled. Mom stiffened. Lila forced a polite smile. "Of course," she said sweetly. "The floor's all yours, sis." The guests chuckled. They had no idea what was coming. "Thank you," I said, scanning the crowd. "I know I wasn't really expected to speak tonight. After all, I've been absent," a few people murmured softly. "But absence," I continued, "doesn't mean silence. And tonight I want to share something my family has conveniently forgotten." Lila's eyes narrowed. Mom shot her a warning look. I smiled. "See, when I came home I realized something strange. My old room, gone. My photos, gone. Even my name, replaced. But you know what wasn't gone?" I pulled out a folder from my bag, the same one from the attic. The truth. Gasps rippled through the guests as I opened the folder. "These," I said, holding up the papers, "are property transfer documents. My parents signed their home over to my sister and her fiancé, not after Dad's retirement, but months before, while pretending it still belonged to them." Mom stepped forward. "Isabella, that's private family business." "Not anymore," I said sharply. "And that's not all." I flipped to another page. This one shows a charity fund under Lila's name, supposedly for local schools, but in reality it's a front. The money's been cycling between accounts, including Dad's. Classic tax evasion. The crowd fell silent. Ethan's face went pale. What are you talking about?" "Oh, come on, Ethan," I said coolly. "You signed half the documents yourself." Lila stepped closer, her perfect mask cracking. "You have no idea what you're saying." "Really?" I asked. "Then maybe the local journalist I invited does." I turned toward the gate. Alex stood there, camera ready, recording everything. Flash, click. The sound echoed through the yard like thunder. People began whispering. Neighbors turned their heads. Pulling out phones, Mom's voice shook. "How could you do this to us?" I met her gaze. "How could you do this to me?" Dad tried to take the microphone back. "Enough, Isabella. You're embarrassing yourself." "No, Dad," I said, my voice steady. "I'm embarrassing you." He froze. "All my life, you taught me that family means honesty, respect, loyalty. But what you really meant was obedience, silence, You replaced me because I didn't fit your picture of perfection. My voice trembled, not from fear, but from truth. You made me feel like a guest in my own home. Like love was something I had to earn. Well, congratulations. You've built your perfect family. Without me. But I want everyone to know the cost of that perfection. I held up the papers one last time. This, I said, is what it took for them to erase me. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Lila exploded. You think you're some kind of hero? You've always been jealous. You left because you couldn't handle being second best. I laughed softly. You're right. I couldn't handle being invisible. Her voice rose, shrill and desperate. You ruined everything. I looked her dead in the eye. No, Lila, you ruined me. I'm just returning the favor. The chaos spread like wildfire. Guests began murmuring. Someone called out, "Is this true?" Another whispered, "She has proof." Alex kept recording as Dad shouted, "Turn that camera off!" But it was too late. The truth was already out. Online, streaming live. Within hours, the story spread beyond that backyard. Local news picked it up. Respected accountant accused of family fraud. Charity fund under investigation. Perfect family, perfect lie. The next morning I sat at a cafe in town, sipping coffee as the headlines rolled across the TV screen. Alex sat opposite me, smiling faintly. You did it, I nodded. They'll never forget me now. But revenge, true revenge, isn't always sweet. That night, when I returned to the house to pack my things, the air was heavy. Dad sat on the couch, head in his hands. Mom didn't look at me. Lila's eyes were red from crying. You destroyed us, she whispered. I stood in the doorway, suitcase in hand. No, Lila, I freed myself. She shook her head. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said softly. But at least I'll feel something. You'll just keep pretending. I drove away that night, away from the house that once held every memory I'd ever loved. The wind blew through the open window, and for the first time I didn't feel small. I didn't feel forgotten. I felt alive. Weeks passed. The investigation continued. My parents' reputation crumbled. Lila's fiancé left town quietly, leaving her to face the mess. People whispered my name now, not as the forgotten daughter, but as the one who stood up. I moved to Seattle, started teaching art, and began painting again. Each brushstroke was a reminder of the girl I used to be, and the woman I became. One afternoon, months later, I received a letter. No return address, just my name, Isabella Moore. Inside was a photograph, a picture of my family. Mom, Dad, and Lila sitting on the porch steps, and written on the back, in my mother's handwriting. You were right. We'll never forget you again. I smiled through tears. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't peace, but it was enough. Epilogue. Some people say revenge leaves you empty. Maybe that's true, but for me, revenge didn't fill the emptiness, it exposed it. And in that space, I built something new, not a perfect life, but an honest one. Because sometimes, the most satisfying revenge isn't destroying them. It's rebuilding yourself so brightly that they can never look away again.